Have you ever wondered how many scary things happen out there? Today you will discover some of them. First story. About 20 years ago, while living in the first house I owned, I was sitting and watching TV late at night. My youngest son, about 3 or 4 at the time, came out of his room and said, "Dad, come see the lady in my room." I said, "What?" And he said, "There's an old lady in my room." I was a little freaked out as I always felt something strange in the house. I went with him to his room and there was nothing there. My son said, "She's gone now." I asked him where he saw her and he said she come out of the wall. Second story. My daughter would do a similar thing. When she was around 3, one day we were playing in the living room. There was a short hallway that led to our bedrooms connected to the living room. So we're playing, and she looks down the hallway, looks back down to her toys. I asked her, "Do you see something, honey?" And she replied, "Yeah. The skeleton people are coming out of your room again." She said this with no hesitation, no delay to think it up, just nonchalantly playing with her toys like it's no big deal. This creeped me out, so I asked her, "Are you just playing? Are you playing pretend to see them?" And just straight-faced and normal, responded with, "No, they're right there pointing behind me." I can't prove there were skeleton people in the house, but that creeped the heck out of me. I know when my kids are telling stories and making crazy things up, and this was not one of those times. She was just straight-faced, normal, just playing with a toy doing her own thing. When kids make up outlandish stories, they get super eager to tell you. She was like, "Whatever. There they are again" kind of way. She didn't seem too bothered by them. Third story. When my daughter was 3, she was taking a bath. We were home alone in a rural area, living in an old mill house. I walked into the next room and squatted down in front of the wood-burning stove to stoke it up, because it was winter. I left the door to the bathroom open and she could see me from the tub. I could have seen her except my back was turned to her while I poked at the stove. All was quiet for a while and then she said, "Mamma Mia, the man in the stove room is back." She didn't sound scared, but sort of excited, like, "Look, there he is." We were alone in the house as far as I knew. It was the back that really got me. I casually questioned her about it, but she didn't have much more to say after that. Very creepy. Fourth story. I was about 10, I think, and got woken up around 2 a.m. by what sounded like a man breathing loudly from somewhere in my bedroom. After being frozen in fear, I ran out and all the way to my parents' room where I woke my dad up. He was confused and disoriented but agreed to come see back there with me. We got there and sat on my bed for about a minute and listened. It seemed like it was gone and I was just about to convince myself that it was a dream or an artifact of partial wakefulness, but then the breathing returned. I stared at my dad and watched his face and it was very clear it was not his breathing, and he was definitely hearing it too. After the moment of surprise, he started searching my room. By the time he had looked everywhere, it stopped. Concerned, he then searched the rest of the house, and even walked around outside with a flashlight checking out the area near my window especially. It was not a windy night, and my room never had any noises from drafts ever. We never found out what the breathing was, and both still remember it. It never happened again. The thing that creeps me out the most now is that there was only one place we didn't think to check, and that was the attic, which connected to my room through a sealed hatch in the ceiling, but maybe that was thin enough to hear someone through. Fifth story. When I was around 7, my parents would leave all of my toys in the living room. One night my nan was looking after me, because my parents had to go on a business trip somewhere overseas. It was around 9 at night and my nan was lying in bed watching TV with me when I hear around 10 of them go off at the same time, the sound coming from the basement. When my nan heard them, she went down to see what was up, but there was nothing there. Another time, and this happened recently, my parents asked me to turn the lights off at their shop, so I go to do that, and when the lights do go off, I hear footsteps coming down the stairs from the 2nd floor. I turned the lights back on to see if it was one of my siblings, but nobody was there. Sixth story. When I was a kid, I had my own room. I was maybe 8 or 9 at this time. I was sitting alone at the table that was in the room and reading a book. I started to hear a cacophony of voices around me. And they were very distinct voices. They were saying things that I just couldn't make out because they were all talking over each other. They were voices of all different pitches. I got up to put the book I was reading back on my bookshelf, and that's when I felt a breeze passed by me, and one of the little knickknacks on the bookshelf fell off, and at the same time I heard a very loud voice saying, "Hey you," and they said my name. I bolted out of that room so fast. 7th story. About 11 years ago, one of my best friends from high school died in a car crash. Long story short, I was almost part of it as well, but decided last minute not to go to a party he was about to attend, and he crashed on his way there. Not drunk driving, just as a note, he just lost control and hit a power line. It was devastating for everyone in my friends group, and his parents, of course, that we all knew really well, so really tough times. We used to hang out almost every day after work, and he would pop at my place without even calling first and would just come in Kramer style out of the blue every few nights. My dad loved him and didn't mind. A week or 2 after his funerals, I started to have vivid dreams of us hanging out in the last few weeks before he passed. Like I'd see him coming, and like nothing happened, we would chill in my backyard. Nothing particular, but it was like we were keeping on living like nothing happened in my dreams. And one night, I had a dream that I was just standing in front of my house. Dreadful feeling, nothing was happening, just standing there. Then at one point in the dream, I rushed to the door and slammed it open, and I woke up at the same moment to my very real door slamming open in the middle of the night. To give an idea of the layout, the house had one level only with a basement, and my room was in the basement, exactly underneath the front door, so I heard that loud. My heart was beating 1,000 times a minute. Took a few moments till I could move. I was especially scared since I lived there alone at the time, since my dad lived abroad that year for work. So I slowly crept upstairs, calling out in the dark if someone was there. I had a baseball bat and would open every light as fast as possible. When I hit the light switch for the main entrance area, I got paralyzed by fear. There was dozens and dozens of snowy/salty footprints circling around the whole floor, going in every room and every corner of the house. Like a dozen persons randomly shuffled all around the floor. There was no one home but me. I had to mop the floor for an hour until everything was gone. I never understood what's happened. Might have been sleepwalking, but it scared the hell out of me. 8th story. A couple years ago during late fall, I was sitting on my bed reading a book when a slow thud started happening in my mattress right under me. It got stronger and faster until it sounded and felt like there was a giant heart beating in the middle of it. It started shaking my legs, and it got to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. I got up and grabbed my mom from her room, telling her what happened, and asked if she could make sure I wasn't going crazy. She came in and immediately heard it. She put her hand down on my bed and felt the beating as well. We ended up taking apart my bedding and mattress, trying to find anything that could do that. It was still beating until we put my mattress back on my bed. Never found a reason why it happened, and it never occurred again. The family that had lived in the house before us lost the dad to heart problems late fall, then moved out, and the family before them also went through the same thing. We always had a burst of activity in the house during the fall and winter months. 9th story. I was working behind the bar on a quiet Saturday morning, hungover of course, and I saw a figure to my right. The quiet bar is to my right. To my front and left was the main bar in a separate room. Walk through the double doors, go round the corner out of my line of sight, and then walk into the cellar. I definitely heard the cellar door bang shut as well because the hinge was knackered. I went in there to say to my mate, "Dean, you're about 2 hours early for work," and there was nobody in the cellar. Was slightly weirded out and mentioned as much to the regulars, and they just shrugged and said, "We've all seen that bloke. He always walks through the doors into the cellar." A couple of years later, my fiancée saw the same figure as we're sat at the main bar, and you can see the quiet bar from the counter. She suddenly said, "Who's just walked into the cellar?" And we all sort of laughed and said that's another one who's seen the guy. 10th story. My best friend died from an asthma attack in front of me and his family when I was 11, super traumatic experience. He passed away maybe around 6 to 7 in the evening. The following morning really early, maybe 6 to 7 a.m. I awoke to my dogs barking, both lab mixes, very aggressively, and charged from my room, and my door flung wide open. I remember feeling my friend's presence like I knew he was there. I got so scared I got chills, curled up into a ball near the wall, and was too afraid to turn around and look. My dog stayed there barking as the door flung open for about 10 seconds, then completely stopped. I regret not looking. I will always remember that moment. I know he was there.